Jordan Addison is not going to USC because of the bright lights of LA. He's going to USC because of the dollar signs. Let's just get right down to it. Don't act like we're naive as sports fans here in Pittsburgh. Don't act like, we were born yesterday. That's why he's going to USC. Not because of some friendship with Caleb Williams. They don't follow each other on social media, or didn't until a few weeks ago. And they grew up an hour away from each other. It's not like they were in the same neighborhood, like they were eating fruit snacks and playing Nintendo 64 together growing up. No, okay, that's not the situation. That has been exaggerated and blown way out of proportion. It's a very dirty game right now, college sports. I have to give, and this is where we're starting today's show with the fallout from this Addison thing. I've got to give Pat Narduzzi a lot of credit. Narduzzi's been very nice to this show. I've gotten to know him much better over the last few months, going back to our relationship with Kenny Pickett. And that was a nice springboard into, I think, developing an even better relationship with Pat Narduzzi. I give him huge points for this. Think about what's happened over the last 24 hours. We have two coaches in Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher who have actually been friends for a long time. Fisher worked for Nick Saban. They've got a relationship that spans 30, 40 years. And they now hate each other's guts because Saban bitched about being in second place. He complained about finishing second in something. A&M having a better recruiting class. Being number 2 out of how many college football teams are there in Division I, Donnie? 130? Somewhere in that neighborhood?
I think it's like 120 to 130.
So he was second in recruiting, and he ruined borderline a lifelong friendship over it. Alabama's not going anywhere. They're going to start this season as the number 1 ranked team in the country ahead of Georgia because they bring their quarterback back. And he's got this ultimate bitch fest, and he's in this sourpuss mood where he's burning bridges all over the place. He's like that old Roman Emperor Nero watching Rome burn here. He's setting fire to everything because he and his 7 national titles, he's ticked off over the way college football has evolved. Nick Saban has been put in a bad mood over this. NIL and the transfer portal. Narduzzi, at least publicly, hasn't said peep yet. He's taken a much higher road than Nick Saban. Now, Narduzzi makes over $5 million a year. We found out because he works for a public university. He's a state employee, technically. We're able to obtain records. We know how much money he made a couple of years ago. He's making big money. He's actually making more money than Jordan Addison, reportedly, if you believe that USC is paying him $3.5 million. I have some doubts about that, but who knows when the LA boosters and LA money get involved. That's why he's there. He's not there because Jordan Addison thinks this is where I'm going to thrive as a wide receiver and make the NFL. I know for a fact that Pitt was going to build its entire offense around Jordan Addison this year. He was going to be the center of attention, the same way Larry Fitzgerald was at Pitt in 2003, where everything was going to be about Jordan Addison as their best returning player. Every single thing Pitt did between now and the backyard brawl would have been a promotion vehicle for Jordan Addison. They would have kickstarted a Heisman campaign for him. I wouldn't have been surprised if our bespectacled friend E.J. Borghetti, who runs the Pitt Sports Information Department, if he tried to get him on our show to kick off something like that. It would have been all about Jordan Addison. That is not going to be the case at USC. They've got Jerry Rice's son who plays wide receiver there. They've got another guy from Oklahoma who actually played with the quarterback and played with the coach there last year, who's a big-time wide receiver, who was a freshman All-American. So there's more mouths to feed there. It's not a slam dunk like this is going to benefit him in the long run. That it's going to make him a better NFL prospect. Every one of these draft nicks who we listen to and like on this show, when they've done their way too early 2023 mock NFL draft, they've all got Jordan Addison in the first round. They're not saying he was a creation of Kenny Pickett or Mark Whipple's offense or anything like that. On his own merits, they think even at 6 feet tall and 175 pounds soaking wet, that Pitt had made him into a first-round NFL wide receiver. He did not need Lincoln Riley's offense or a quarterback that grew up an hour down the road to be that guy at Pitt. And this came out in an Athletic article today, that other ACC coaches have a lot of empathy for what happened to Pat Narduzzi and Pitt fans. That takes a lot for like the Dabo Sweeneys of the world to feel sorry for Pitt. But the timing of this just sucks. And the way it went down sucks too. Because he wasn't in the transfer portal. And that's where these collectives now, these NIL collectives, where these rich people or ex-jocks get together. And sure, it gets money to college athletes. That's great. They're the ones that are putting out the product. They deserve to get paid. Not just the schools, not just the coaches, not just the athletic directors. The players do deserve to get paid. But they shouldn't be tampering with kids and calling kids who are happy or are at least content or satisfied with where they are. He wasn't in the transfer portal. Pitt was going to find ways, believe me, I know. Oh, how do you know, Andrew? Well, because I broke the friggin' story that he was going to leave Pitt, okay? So I'm a little bit, I wouldn't say I know everything about this story, but you're not listening to somebody talk right now who's, screaming out of his ass or his rear end. Pitt was going to come up with ways to make Jordan Addison not just happy with the number of touchdown catches and receptions, but the things that are college football in 2022. You know why the USFL doesn't work? You know why the XFL probably won't work? Sorry, Doug Whaley, if you're listening. If you've been listening today, Doug, it's been tough because Jack Ham called you out, and now I'm bashing the XFL, but you're still my guy. Those leagues don't work because college football is the AAA of the NFL. That's why. Because now they aren't student athletes. They're paid athletes. And not just duffel bags of money like Nick Nolte and Blue Chips. By the way, you ever see that one, Donnie? Go watch that.
I'm a fan of that movie.
Oh, that is a fantastic movie.
Penny Hardaway.
Yep. The Big Country Reeves character.
Larry Bird with a great cameo.
The guy whose family wanted a John Deere. You know what I'm talking about? That's a heck of a movie. Yeah. It's not just bags of money anymore. Everything is quote-unquote on the up and up. Pitt would have taken care of Addison that way. I'm convinced of it. Maybe not to the tune of $3.5 million, but he wasn't going to cry poor, and he was going to be in a position to be a first-round pick here. It's not a bad situation. New quarterback, I get it. New offensive coordinator, new wide receiver coach, but still the same head coach and the infrastructure for him to be a great player and to go on to be a great NFL player. It took 3 weeks for him to make his decision. It was USC the whole time. It all happened in the 11th hour. Kids transfer or try to transfer after spring practices all the time. That's been, go ask, your 98-year-old Jerry DePaulas and these people out there that have covered college football forever. That's part of the game. That's why Pat Narduzzi didn't declare Keaton Slovis the starting quarterback over Nick Patty. He didn't want to lose a quarterback after. This is me talking now. After spring practice, that's always been part. Guys lose jobs or figure out they're going to be backups. They leave for greener pastures. That's part of college football. The guys that show up in the transfer portal usually in April are guys that are looking for fresh start somewhere, not the national wide receiver of the year. So if Addison, after the Peach Bowl, sees all these guys leave, including Kenny Pickett, and is like, I'm getting out of Dodge. I don't want to be the guy holding the bag. Pat Narduzzi's got 3 or 4 months to find other wide receivers. He's going to have to do it by committee. There's only one Jordan Addison. It leaves him time to go do that like everyone else. See who's in the transfer portal. You do that in mid to late April, we know for the most part the players that are in there. Guys who weren't good enough to cut it at the schools they were at. These are the leftovers. You're shopping from the clearance rack. You're shopping at Donnie's place, Gabriel Brothers. Sorry, Donnie. But that's true, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you could also...
You can find a diamond in the rough,
right,
I guess, but
yeah.
they're not...
You could always find something that looks to be low value that ends up really paying off.
But they're not projected first-round picks. So, I am really fired up about this. I know that, we're supposed to be pro-athlete, not like professional athlete. I mean pro the athlete bettering his situation. Which, financially, it sounds like that for sure happened here. But I'm not convinced Jordan Addison in the long run made the right call going to USC. And I'm also unhappy with the way it went down. And the precedents that it sets throughout college football now. Where if this is fair game, if a player like Jordan Addison doesn't have to be in the transfer portal to have USC throwing money and things like that at him, then any running back or any tight end at Pitt or any of those guys in the middle of a great year, if they're not NFL draft eligible, are going to start to get contacted by the Ohio States and Alabamas and Georgias, and that'll just drive a wedge further between the schools we watch and support here and the big guns. I know that's probably music to the ears to the Penn State fans out there thinking, hey, we are one of these big boys. Like, this will benefit us. Fine. That's how you feel. You don't have any empathy towards Pitt because you hate Pitt and Pitt's a rival. That's your prerogative. I guess if I rooted for a school like that, I wouldn't feel sorry for the school either. But in baseball, I'm a Mets fan. We've got the richest friggin' owner in baseball by far, and I still do feel sorry for the Pirates of the world. That's me. I'm not a myopic person. I'm not a selfish person. I look at things fairly and objectively. I didn't go to Pitt, but I'm looking at this down the middle, and something about it doesn't smell right to me. It doesn't sit right with me. And you got Cowherd up here, who honestly should have to put a disclaimer on everything he says and should have to admit when he goes on the air, I am getting paid by USC. For the record, I am not getting paid by Pitt. This is the Pitt flagship, but I don't have a check that has H2P on it. Cowherd is probably hanging out with these USC, these Trojan lovers, these Will Ferrells of the world. They're probably giving him $1,000 handshakes. What a fraud he is. Colin Cowherd will never be welcome on this radio station. If Doran Dickerson tries to book him, I will go into Craig Riley's office and say, Doran will not get hired here full time. I will put my foot down. If Paul Zeiss wants to interview Colin Cowherd and try to make a name for himself, I will go down the hall and say he will never get a show at AM. I will flex my proverbial muscle here if I have to. I'm mad at Zach Banner, and I love Zach. But he's guilty by association because he's a USC guy. I hope USC loses every game this year. They went 4-8 last year. Their coach's last name is the same as our program director, but I don't think they're related. And if I saw Lincoln Riley, I would pick him up over my head like Ultimate Warrior did to the model Rick Martel at the 1990 Survivor Series and slam his ass. Because I could probably beat up Lincoln Riley, one of the few people in major collegiate sports that I feel comfortable. If I saw the guy in a dark alley, I could beat the snot out of him. And he's such a big, phony hypocrite. College football needs guardrails. NIL is out of control. Oh, Mr. Riley, Jordan Addison's agent on line 1. Do you want to take the call? Hell yes, I do. Makes me sick. Donnie, anything you want to add to this?
I don't know. You're kind of on fire.
Well, you came in with no
steam.
sleeves today, so you're ready to do some heavy lifting with Mueller out.
Yeah, I thought it would be warmer in here because it's supposed to be warmer outside. I saw the forecast saying near 90, and I feared for what
I
it
mean,
could
if
be like in here.
anybody has a right to go on a Nick Saban-esque warpath, it's Narduzzi. He lost his best player over this at a time in the offseason where it was nearly impossible to adequately replace the guy. And Saban's out here ruining friendships and relationships and crying like a baby because he has the number 2 recruiting class and probably the guy that's going to be the number 1 overall pick in next year's draft still on his roster at quarterback. I'm supposed to feel sorry for that guy? No.
See, I think it's good well, I guess not good, but Pat Narduzzi knows the difficulties that come with recruiting. And obviously, this is, it may or may not be foul play done by USC, but he knows it's not easy. See, Nick Saban, all-time great coach, maybe the greatest ever in college football, but, he has it pretty easy. He brings in guys that year after year, they're
Nick
5
Saban
stars.
should be ashamed of
could
himself. If I was somebody that grew up with Nick Saban in West Virginia, and his dad was a high school or football coaching legend down there, Pop Warner, I'd be ashamed to consider Nick Saban a friend. He doesn't remember. He doesn't recall where he comes from. The man coached at Kent State and Michigan State. He hasn't always had it easy, but he has forgotten how tough it is for the little guy. And I thought what Jimbo Fisher said, Donnie, was right. The guy now has a God complex.
Oh, he
thinks
does.
He's the god of college football.
And he's been spoiled now for well over a decade. I think it goes back
he forgot his blue collar roots like you and me. We haven't forgotten about that.
But it sort of goes back to whenever the argument got made around Heisman Trophy time that Kenny Pickett was a million times more valuable to his team than Bryce Young. If you put Kenny Pickett on Alabama's team last year,
they probably would have beaten Georgia.
Not only do they win every game, they win every game by 40.
Yeah.
And
agreed.
Alabama has a guy right behind Bryce Young, I guarantee it, who will step in when Bryce Young leaves next year and be just as productive.
Well, he might not be as productive because A&M will get the best quarterback and Nick Saban will have to settle for the second best quarterback. Isn't that just so sad? Oh, my God. Cry me a river, a Nile river of crocodile tears. You oatmeal pie eating jerk. USC. I have had no quarrel with USC like my entire life. I actually felt bad when they took Reggie Bush's Heisman Trophy award away from him because I didn't think that was right. Now I want them to lose every game in perpetuity. I want them to get the death penalty. I want them to blow up the LA Coliseum. I want them to disband their college football program. I'm not going to say anything mean about Jordan Addison, but I am tempted to say mean things about the advice he was getting from people around him. Like the pretend agent that he has, like the people that were in his ear saying, yeah, it's in your best interest to take the millions of dollars from USC, even though USC won't build an offense around you because Lincoln Riley has his quarterback from Oklahoma and his wide receiver from Oklahoma there. So he's probably getting lied to.